This may be biased in terms of, my statements. And first of all, I want to go back to what something that Lisa said that is echoed throughout this book. And that is that most people experience themselves as good, moral, decent individuals. They cannot understand the fact that no one is immune from inheriting the racial biases and stereotypes of our ancestors, our institutions, and our society. And because they see themselves as good moral individuals, they have a difficult time realizing that they may engage in behaviors that are biased and discriminatory. And we use in this book a dance metaphor to describe the interaction of how four major roles, perpetrator, target, bystander, and a white ally, symbiotically interact with one another to support, maintain, and reinforce racism. And each of these individuals, whether perpetrator, bystander, target, or ally, has major challenges that they need to overcome in order to be able to help us disarm and dismantle racism. And we have there is a chapter for each of these different roles that we use and talk about what they need to overcome and what they need to do in order to be allies to move forward in combating racism. We do something, I think, very unique here. We liken racism and its expression to a racist dance performance. And these are composed of the four individual actors that I've already talked about. And the implication is that their designated roles are choreographed with racist symbolic meaning. And this comes from cultural racism, something that we attach together. Now, when I talk about cultural racism, I'm talking about the individual and institutional expression of the superiority of one group's cultural heritage over another, their arts, their crafts, their language, their religion, and the power to impose them on people of color. And the imposition is oftentimes through a level of unawareness. They come in the form of cultural scripts, ground rules, norms that emanate from cultural and institutional racism. And what I like to do is indicate that it's almost like cultural racism and institutional racism are puppeteers that pull the strings of individual puppets to make them comply with the manifestation of racism. And the whole task of this book is how do we break that string that is pulling us to behave in choreographed dance ways that are racist in nature. But what I want readers to understand is that the dance metaphor is not meant to trivialize or to diminish the harshness or the weight of racism, but it illustrates how racist scripts force compliance among all of us in our interactions with one another. Now, I mentioned earlier that this book is unique because we actually provide anti-bias tools that we call micro and macro interventions, how to confront racism at the individual level. When you, as a bystander, see a moral transgression occurring, how can you intervene? And what prevents you from intervening? At the institutional level, we're all controlled by programs, policies, and practices that dictate and require us to conform to certain areas that prevent equal access and opportunity. How do we indeed overcome and confront and change those rules and regulations? And then lastly, at the cultural level, it's a belief that we have that prevention is better than remediation. Much of our book is on remediation, but how do we prevent these biases from being transmitted to our sons and daughters? And that's where I think Lisa does a fine job in chapter 10 that talks about how you raise race conscious children so they indeed immunize themselves against the cultural conditioning that is being imposed upon them. How can caretakers, parents, teachers teach our children to ward off the social conditioning that comes to us? But throughout the book, we do something else that is important. I know I'm taking a long time here, but one of them I've mentioned through easily earlier. No one is immune from inheriting the racial biases. We have all biases and prejudices, and it's the ones that are outside the level of our conscious awareness that does the great harm. Secondarily, we need to realize that race, culture, ethnicity is a function of each and every one of us. This is not a black thing, a yellow thing. White Americans have a race culture, and it's important for them to begin to understand who they are as racial cultural beings. The third thing that we try to do in the book is separate out this issue of blame. That white people, for example, as allies, are not the enemies. It is white supremacy, a doctrine in which, in some sense, we can see white individuals as being equally victimized, culturally conditioned into oppressor roles. And I think that maybe I should just stop there. Lisa, you have thoughts about this?
Well, I think your response was quite comprehensive. The only thing I'll add is that one thing that feels especially important to me about this book, after working together, Daryl, for over a decade on microaggressions, is this book really expands the conversation beyond microaggressions. So rather than looking at those isolated incidents, as Daryl mentioned, we're situating them in this broader relational system, and we don't stop at just responding in the moment. We're really introducing these strategies for prevention, which draw from developmentally grounded ideas around racial socialization and what we're calling racial micro protections.